It is late in the year 1811, but it is spring in the Chilean city of Valparaiso. At the city's port, a crowd gathers to watch a foreign ship flying a flag they have never seen before dock, and a man walk off the ship. This man is the first American ambassador to the nations of Latin America and was appointed back in 1809 by President James Madison. His name was Joe Roberts Poinsett. Poinsett was born in 1779 to a prominent Charleston, South Carolina physician by the name of Elisha Poinsett and his wife, Catherine Ann. He received education at the University of Edinburgh and the Royal Military Academy in Woolwich, London, after which he returned to Charleston to pursue a military career, but his father tried to pressure Poinsett into becoming a lawyer, which he detested the idea of. Therefore, in 1801, Poinsett went back to Europe, traveling throughout Europe and Russia, where, upon learning that Poinsett was from South Carolina, the Tsar Alexander asked Poinsett to inspect the cotton fields, to which Poinsett obliged. He also traveled through the Caucasus, before finally returning home in 1808. However, Poinsett wasn't returning to Charleston because he was homesick. He had heard of the rising threat of war between the United States and Britain, and intended to serve in the military. However, President James Madison had other plans and appointed Poinsett consul general to Chile and Argentina in 1909. Poinsett made it to Santiago on December 29, 1811. Before his arrival, two families were struggling for power, the Lorraines and Carreras. However, Poinsett arrived as the Carrera leader, José Miguel Carrera, gained power. Carrera's government disagreed on how to receive Poinsett, with some arguing that his appointment had not been confirmed by the U.S. Senate, but a majority wished to establish trade with the United States. The official reception was held on February 24, 1812. Poinsett was the first ambassador of a foreign government to reach Chile. However, he quickly found an adversary in the junta in charge of Peru. The colonial viceroy of Peru was a royalist and attempted to use privateers to embargo the rebellious Chile. These privateers began to seize any ships trading with the Chileans and confiscate their goods, including American ships. Poinsett learned of the seizure of an American whaling ship, and later learned that 10 other American ships had been seized in the Bay of Concepcion. Without any contact with the Madison administration, Poinsett decided something had to be done to stop this violation of American trade rights. Poinsett urged the Chilean government to close its ports off to Peruvian trade, but the Chilean government feared it did not have the power to do that. Instead, the Chileans asked for Poinsett to help provide them with American arms and ammunition. However, the United States was involved in the War of 1812 with the United Kingdom and did not have the capability of sending weapons to far-off Chile while fighting off a British invasion. Instead, Poinsett urged the Chileans to create a national constitution to oppose Peru. A commission, including the famed friar and politician José Camilo Henriquez González and 6 others, were named to write the constitution. The group's first meeting was held at Poinsett's house on July 11th of 1812. With the seizure of American ships continuing, Poinsett accepted a position in the Chilean army to fight against the royalists in Peru. He was later granted the rank of general and led a charge at the head of the Chilean cavalry at the Battle of San Carlos, securing victory for Chile. In May of 1813, he went to the Bay of Concepcion, arriving in the night near the port town of Talcahuano, where he began firing on the town. By dawn, he sent an emissary to demand the surrender of the Peruvian royalists, to which they obliged on May 29th. In September of 1813, American frigate Essex arrived in Chilean waters, searching for British warships and whalers. They informed Poinsett of the ongoing War of 1812, which gave him an intense desire to go home and fight the British. However, the Essex could not leave until it completed its mission. As the Essex was finally ready to leave for the United States, 2 British warships, the HMS Phoebe and the HMS Cherub, were spotted in Valparaiso Harbor. Commodore Porter of the Essex and Poinsett returned to Santiago to use the fort there. However, after 6 weeks, Porter attempted to launch a desperate breakout, but was defeated. While most of the POWs were sent home in a charity ship known as a cartel, Poinsett was forced to stay behind in Chile. He was able to secure passage to Buenos Aires, arriving in the city to find a well-established junta, which he was able to establish a trade deal with. With British warships driving American trade from South America, Poinsett had to find his own way back to the United States, but he was determined. From Buenos Aires, Poinsett secured passage to Bahia, a state in northeastern Brazil, then transferring to a ship to the Madeira Islands, 535 miles from mainland Europe. From there, Poinsett finally found passage to Charleston, arriving on May 28, 1815. In 1816, Poinsett traveled to New York to meet with Carrera, who had been exiled from Chile after the Royalists had consolidated power. He had met with President James Madison, who, despite giving Carrera a warm welcome, did not offer assistance to the revolutionary. Poinsett was his only hope. Poinsett held several conferences in Philadelphia in August 1816 and succeeded in gaining a contract to supply arms for an expedition Carrera was planning. From there, Poinsett set out on a tour of the United States with 5 men, one of them a slave, making stops in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati before stopping in Lexington, Kentucky, meeting with famed Congressman Henry Clay. From Lexington, Poinsett went to Louisville, then Nashville, Tennessee, where he had breakfast with General Andrew Jackson. After traveling 2,000 miles, Poinsett finally returned to Charleston in November of 1816. Poinsett was aware that he had been nominated by his friends to represent Charleston in the South Carolina House of Representatives, and he won the seat in the 1816 elections. Poinsett also served on the South Carolina Board of Public Works as president. In 1820, Poinsett won a seat in the United States House of Representatives, representing Charleston. He simultaneously served as special envoy to Mexico under the government of President James Monroe. Poinsett was a supporter of the Monroe Doctrine that prohibited European influence in American affairs, and signed the first treaty between the United States and Mexico in 1828, the Treaty of Limits, that established a recognized border between the United States and Mexico. Visiting an area south of Mexico City, Poinsett noticed a flower that the Mexicans called Flor de Nochebuena, the Christmas Eve flower. Poinsett, being an avid naturalist, brought samples of the flower home with him, and by 1836 the flower was widely known as the Poinsetta in the United States. So there you have it. The Poinsetta was named after an 18th century action movie character with an obsession with Latin America. And in case you were wondering if he was the hero or the villain, he did own multiple slaves and a plantation in Georgetown, despite being a public proponent against the South's dependence on slavery. In 1837, Poinsett was nominated as President Martin Van Buren's Secretary of War, during which time Poinsett oversaw the removal of around 40,000 Native Americans from their homes as a proponent of Western expansion, but he retired in 1841. In 1844, Poinsett became president of a predecessor of the Smithsonian. Poinsett died on December 12, 1851, en route to his family farm in Greenville, South Carolina. He is buried in Statesburg, South Carolina. Joel Roberts Poinsett was quite the character, adventuring across much of the world, impacting the history of entire nations. But let us not forget that he was also a slave owner, and his actions as U.S. Secretary of War led to the displacement of tens of thousands of Native Americans. Poinsett is a man with a complicated legacy, but despite that, his name lives on in a flower. Merry Christmas.